Good morning, I'm Kenneth Moak.
And I'm Janae Norman. Here are the top 5 things to know this Wednesday. Number 1, for the first time, a major airline is suspending all flights to and from mainland China.
In the meantime, a plane carrying Americans who were evacuated from the city of Wuhan, where the outbreak started, has now been diverted. The flight stopped to refuel in Alaska overnight before continuing on to Southern California.
And that's where all passengers are set to be processed this morning at March Air Reserve Base east of Los Angeles. Originally, that flight was supposed to land in Ontario, California. There was no word overnight on why the flight plan was changed.
Number 2, the new phase beginning today in President Trump's impeachment trial. Senators will now get to ask questions.
And in a major development, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell now says he does not have enough votes to prevent witnesses from testifying at the trial. 4 key Senate Republicans suggest they want to hear from former National Security Advisor John Bolton. Bolton's upcoming book links the president to withholding aid from Ukraine in exchange for investigating former Vice President Joe Biden.
On to number 3, a major development in the Kobe Bryant helicopter crash investigation.
A new recording has surfaced that appears to capture the moment of the crash. This comes as the NTSB gathers evidence from the wreckage, including an iPad that could contain details about the flight plan.
Number 4, for the first time, the Justice Department is fighting back against those annoying robocalls by going after the companies that allow them.
The Justice Department has filed for temporary restraining orders against 2 groups of telecom carriers that allegedly allowed calls they knew were fraudulent. One company is accused of allowing 720 million calls during a 3-week period. And finally, number 5, the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, also known as PETA, want to change how we celebrate Groundhog Day.
The animal rights group wants to replace Punxsutawney Phil with a robotic groundhog. PETA officials say groundhogs naturally avoid humans, and being put in a box on February 2nd keeps Phil from hibernating.
But how many more weeks, Phil? How many more weeks of winter?
Good morning.
Oh, hi.
It's good to see you. It's a special morning because Janae is back.
I am back. Had a nice vacation. Thank you for
I hope you feel refreshed.
mentioning that. I do. I'm tired. It's a hard transition.
I know,
back,
but I see you, and you look refreshed, so you're doing good.
And you look refreshed also.
Oh, well, thank you.
You're
I
very
appreciate
beautiful.
it.
All right, let's get to the big story in Washington. And the new phase beginning today in President Trump's impeachment trial. Senators will now get to ask questions.
And in a major development, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell now says he does not have enough votes to prevent witnesses from testifying at the trial. ABC's Andrew Dimbert has the latest from Capitol Hill. Andrew, good morning.
Good morning, Kenneth and Janae. The question is, do Democrats have enough votes to call on witnesses? We're soon going to find out, along with what questions senators have for both sides.
That ends our presentation.
The president's defense rests its case.
You cannot impeach a president on an unsourced allegation.
Now, the next phase of the trial begins questioning. Over the next 2 days, senators will be allowed to submit questions to the House managers or the president's counsel, but not both. Questions must be submitted to the Chief Justice in writing.
Mr. Chief Justice, I have reached an agreement with the Democratic leader on how to proceed.
But moving forward, all the attention now centering around witnesses. Republican leader Mitch McConnell telling his members in a closed-door meeting that he does not have the votes to block them. 4 key Senate Republicans suggest they want to hear from former National Security Advisor John Bolton. Bolton's upcoming book links the president to withholding aid from Ukraine in exchange for investigating Joe Biden.
I think that Bolton probably has something to offer. So we'll figure out how we're going to learn more.
And in another turn, the president's former chief of staff, John Kelly, reportedly now saying, "I believe John Bolton," and suggesting Bolton should testify, saying if there are people that could contribute to this, either innocence or guilt, I think they should be heard. This while Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, on CBS News, ripped Bolton for his book.
Here's the only conclusion I can come to, and it's a harsh one, and I feel very bad about it. He's a backstabber.
And the question portion could go up to 8 hours today, 8 hours tomorrow, and then that witness vote could happen as early as Friday. Now, if no new witnesses are allowed to testify in this trial, then things could wrap up as soon as the end of the week. Kenneth, Janae?
All right, Andrew there on Capitol Hill. Thank you. And as senators are in Washington for the impeachment trial, the other Democratic candidates for president are making a final push in Iowa ahead of the caucuses there less than a week away, Monday.
Yeah, coming up quick.
Yeah, let's check in with our team following the campaigns on the trail.
Hey guys, we are here in Clinton, Iowa. Former Vice President Joe Biden is campaigning right behind us. He's 6 days away from the Iowa caucuses. He's taking an aggressive campaign schedule here in the Hawkeye State. He's taking questions from voters on a range of topics today: healthcare, foreign policy, whether or not he considers Senator Kamala Harris as his vice presidential candidate. Biden has also fielded a lot of questions on the ongoing impeachment drama in Washington, D.C. He's largely tried to stay out of the fray and focus on his own campaign message, which is really unifying the country, bringing Republicans, Democrats, independents aboard, and pitching himself as the most electable candidate to take on Donald Trump in November.
Good morning. I'm in Indianola, where Mayor Pete Buttigieg wrapped up his Tuesday. He held 3 town halls across the state, and at his first 2 in Ottumwa and Osceola, the mayor took questions from some of his supporters who wanted to know how they could speak to Sanders supporters on caucus night. They say that Sanders supporters are some of the most adamant out of any of the campaigns, and Buttigieg lately has been targeting Sanders in fundraising emails, but he is yet to call him out by name at his town halls or when he's asked by the media why he's now targeting Sanders just days away from the caucus. Here's a little bit of what he told one of the voters on Tuesday.
One of the rules, as a matter of fact, the number one rule we have is respect. And that's not just respect for folks we run into every day, it's respect for our competitors and their supporters. We're not going to win everybody over, and that's okay too. Don't tear your hair out trying to convince folks who are dead set hardcore for their person. That's okay. Just make sure they understand why it is that you're for this campaign.
Now, in those fundraising emails, Buttigieg tells his supporters that Sanders could be the nominee of the party, but it's going to take someone different and to stop political warfare to beat Donald Trump in 2020. And now on Wednesday, Buttigieg will hold 5 town halls across Iowa, starting the day in Jefferson and ending it in New Hampton. Back to you.
A big thanks to our team there in Iowa. Andrew Yang brought out the star power with comedian Dave Chappelle, introducing him at a rally. Chappelle talked about Yang's proposal of a universal basic income and why he thinks Yang is the candidate to defeat President Donald Trump.
I don't look at Trump supporters as my enemy at all. I understand why people vote for Trump. I understand people are desperate. And I think that Andrew's right. You run against the reasons that Trump got elected. You know, I mean, I got friends on both sides of the political aisle. I got fans on both sides of the political aisle. A lot of people say professionally it's not wise to support any candidate, but this idea is so good that I think it should exist. And I think the fountainhead of many of the good ideas on the table this year are coming from a single source, Andrew Yang. And for some reason, no one's paying attention to this guy's the origin of a platform that really does address where I think the country needs to go. It's a good plan.
And make sure you tune in to our full coverage of the Iowa caucus Monday right here on ABC News Live.
Coming up, is there a chance for peace in the Middle East? We'll have the latest reaction to President Trump's peace plan from across the pond.
Plus, a man appears to light up a joint in court after this.
Welcome back. As the impeachment trial was underway in the Senate, President Trump unveiled his long-awaited plan to bring peace to the Middle East. Alongside Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that he accepted the U.S. proposal and that regardless of the Palestinian decision, Israel planned to carry out the plan's proposed division of land in the disputed West Bank. But Palestinian president is rejecting the proposal as nonsense. Let's go across the pond to Julia McFarland in the London Bureau for the details. Good morning, Julia.
Morning, guys. Yeah, that's right. The deal of the century, as it was described, was unveiled in the White House yesterday with the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, and President Trump, who says he has found a way for the Israelis and the Palestinians to make peace at last. But a lot of observers and critics say that the plan gives pretty much everything that Mr. Netanyahu wants, but concedes very little to the Palestinians. Now, under the plan, what do we know about what it entails so far? Well, Jerusalem will remain Israel's undivided capital, according to the plan. There is an opportunity for Palestinians to achieve a state of their own, but few details were given on that. The plan doubles the amount of Palestinian territory and provides a capital in East Jerusalem, but the PLO says that the Palestinians would only be able to control about 15% of what they say is historic Palestine. There's also not a lot of clarity on where in East Jerusalem the Palestinians would have access to, and there have been rumors that a neighborhood called Abu Dis might be the administrative capital of a future Palestinian state. But that leads to another question, because Abu Dis, just to give you guys a little bit of background info, it is a neighborhood that is a couple kilometers away from the center of Jerusalem, but in practical terms, it takes more or less an hour to get to because of the Israeli security wall. Now, that the presence of that wall that snakes around the West Bank and, of course, in parts of Jerusalem, there was very little mention about what's going to happen to that wall. I don't think anyone is under any illusions that that wall is going to come down anytime soon. And that leads to a bigger question, which is whether it is a contiguous Palestinian territory set out in the plan. It has very convoluted borders because under the plan it formalizes all of the Israeli settlements. Now remember, there are 400,000 Israelis living in the occupied West Bank, and under this plan those settlements would become part and under Israeli sovereignty. So that begs a huge number of logistical questions for any kind of viable Palestinian state. Now, there was also suggested a tunnel leading from Gaza to the West Bank, and some other further areas just south of the Gaza Strip would be incorporated into a future Palestinian state as well. President Trump also, he dangled the proposal of $50 billion of international investment, most of it which would come from Arab states for Palestinians. He said that it would double the Palestinian economy, it would lift many Palestinians out of poverty, and it would pave the way for a bright future for the Palestinians should they agree to this plan. Now, this plan has been widely panned by the Palestinians. The president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, he said Jerusalem is not for sale. There were widespread protests in the Gaza Strip. There was a heavy IDF presence in the West Bank yesterday as the plan was announced. Now, the international reaction has been quite mixed. The plan received some cautious words of optimism from American and Israeli allies, notably the UK. Jordan has warned about the annexation of settlements. However, the Saudi Arabians and the UAE, they both commended the Trump administration for putting forward serious proposals and urged Palestinians to consider them. However, the UN has said that it remains committed to a two-state solution on those pre-1967 borders before the 1967 war, when Israel seized the West Bank and Gaza. Now, an important thing to remember, guys, is that this plan was announced just hours after Netanyahu relinquished his application for immunity from charges, and then he became formally indicted on corruption charges. Now, another thing to throw into the mix as well is that Israel is going to the polls for a general election again for the third time in less than a year. So Prime Minister Netanyahu may have partially unveiled this plan alongside President Trump, but he may not be around very much longer. It's not clear when that trial against him is going to start. It's unlikely proceedings will start before the March 2nd election. But of course, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's main contender, Benny Gantz, he was also meeting with President Trump. He gave his approval to the plan. And just the last thing to mention, guys, is that on Sunday, the Israeli cabinet are going to vote on the formal annexation of those Israeli settlements in the West Bank. Really, really complicated current of events at the moment that may cast some doubt on whether this plan is going to come to fruition. Guys.
All right, our thanks to Julia. And we've been up keeping track of all the news overnight. So here's a look at some of the stories we've covered so far on World News Now and America This Morning.
We begin with the breaking news concerning the potentially deadly coronavirus spreading in China. For the first time, a major airline is suspending all flights to and from mainland China.
In the meantime, a plane carrying Americans who were evacuated from the city where the outbreak started has now been diverted. The flight stopped to refuel in Alaska overnight before continuing on to Southern California, where all passengers are set to be processed this morning at March Air Reserve Base east of Los Angeles. Originally, that flight was supposed to land in Ontario, California. There was no word overnight on why the flight plan was changed.
Their journey started at the deserted airport in Wuhan, China. One man from Rhode Island, flying from China with his family, spoke to us from Alaska.
Big cheer let out in the plane when we landed. We are set to go through customs and should be back wheels up in about 3 hours. Tired, exhausted mentally and physically, but happy to be back and just really grateful the United States government came through for us.
And this morning, we're learning more about the Iranian missile attack that targeted U.S. troops in Iraq earlier this month. The Pentagon now says 50 U.S. service members suffered traumatic brain injuries. That's up from 34 that U.S. officials recently reported. President Trump last week said the injuries were not very serious. Well, no serious injuries have been reported after a magnitude 7.7 earthquake hit between Cuba and Jamaica. One man couldn't stop a shelf of bottles from falling in the Cayman Islands. Students in Jamaica had to take cover under their desks during the shaking, but no major damage has been reported. Some high-rises in Miami were even evacuated Tuesday afternoon as a precaution.
A developing story from space this morning. 2 satellites are on track for a near collision over Pittsburgh today.
Experts say the satellites could come within 50 feet of each other. One was launched in 1983, the other back in the 60s. Scientists say there's a 1% chance of a collision.
And here on Earth, we turn now to our exclusive interview with the former fiancée of Aaron Hernandez. She's speaking out for the first time since the explosive new documentary about him.
That Netflix series digs deep into his chaotic life and speculates about his sexuality, something his former fiancée says went too far.
This morning, the former fiancé of Aaron Hernandez is speaking exclusively to Good Morning America, addressing new claims in the Netflix series Killer Inside, the mind of Aaron Hernandez.
Now, the guy's got a house. Why does he need another apartment?
The documentary chronicles Hernandez's life, from a superstar in the NFL with a $40 million contract to his arrest for the murder of his friend Odin Lloyd. Also in the docuseries, claims about his sexuality, with a man claiming he and Hernandez had an intimate relationship in high school when they were teammates. Speaking with ABC's Amy Robach, Hernandez's former fiancé says she never knew about the claims, but wishes that she had.
Do you want to comment at all on that aspect of this documentary and the rumors that had been there that Aaron may have been bisexual or gay?
If he did feel that way, or if he felt the urge, I wish that I was told. And I wish that he would have told me, because I would not have loved him any differently. I would have understood.
The former NFL star, who suffered from the degenerative brain disease, CTE, died by suicide in prison in 2017. His attorney, Jose Baez, is also criticizing the documentary.
I think they're trying to find a simple answer for a complex situation. Health was a huge factor. I mean, I don't understand why we need to search around for an answer as to why he committed suicide.
And Hernandez's former fiancé explained why she didn't take part in the Netflix series. We'll have that and much more of the interview later on Good Morning America.
The Connecticut man accused of killing his estranged wife is in critical condition this morning after what police are calling a suicide attempt. They rushed to the home of Fotis Dulos after he was found in his car suffering from carbon monoxide poisoning. He's charged with the murder of Jennifer Dulos, who hasn't been seen since last May. Fotis Dulos did not show up for a bail hearing, prompting officers to visit his home. He pleaded not guilty to murder and other charges.
The head of Harvard University's chemistry department is accused of secretly helping China steal U.S. research and technology. The FBI says Dr. Charles Lieber lied about his work with China while getting paid as much as $50,000 a month. The feds also arrested 2 other Boston area researchers who allegedly worked for China. The U.S. budget deficit is going to top $1 trillion this year. That's according to the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, which blames the new tax laws and increased federal spending. The CBO also says unemployment will stay low, but inflation and interest rates will rise. The budget deficit hasn't been this high in 5 years.
Incredible footage this morning of a woman saved from icy waters outside Detroit. She'd been fishing when she stumbled in. The water was a bone-chilling 36 degrees. 2 fishermen kept her from flipping below the surface. She was in the water for 15 minutes before rescue crews pulled her out. she is still recovering.
15 minutes is a long time in that cold water. Well, the woman who helped a killer clean up the scene after a gruesome murder will spend the next 3 years in prison.
Patrick Frazee was convicted 2 months ago for killing his fiancée in her home in Colorado. Former nurse Crystal Jean Lee testified against him as part of a plea deal. She sobbed as she apologized during her sentencing. Severe weather in Australia. Monsoon-like rains will continue until the weekend in Queensland. More than 1.5 feet of rain fell in just 24 hours, flooding roads, backyards, and parking lots. It's a very different story in southeastern Australia, where residents in Canberra are keeping an eye on an out-of-control brush fire in a national park.
A man in Tennessee sparked quite a scene during a court hearing.
He was appearing before a judge on a marijuana possession citation when he appears to pull a joint from his pocket and light that thing up.
Quite a guy.
Spencer Boston was quickly taken into custody. He's now facing several new charges, including contempt of court. That joint he lit up was collected as evidence.
I mean,
was he raising awareness?
That is quite a protest there by old Spencer. Some, not me, not you, but some people might be impressed.
Some people.
Some people. And there is a big headline.
Big old headline.
Big old headline out of Bachelor Nation.
Producers of The Bachelor are apparently trying to reach a much older demographic, so they've now put out a casting call for active and single men and women ages 65 and up for an exciting new dating show.
So there's, sorry, Jack, what?
Jack, what was that?
I think I almost threw up in my mouth.
Okay.
About this.
No word yet on the show's format or when it might air.
Yeah. And that is our question of the day. Would you watch a Bachelor-style reality show for seniors? Would you be interested in auditioning?
Tell us what you think
Maybe,
in the comments.
Yeah.
Or tweet us at ABC News Live. What?
Getting grandma, and I'm not saying you. You're a long way away from that.
I didn't think you were talking about me.
And I'm just, okay. I'm just saying if you got a grandma, grandpa, you
offer them up.
Yeah.
Post pictures if you want to.
Coming up, another busy day in Washington on this Wednesday, January 29th.
Plus, will SpaceX finally blast off after bad weather delayed 2 scheduled launches this week? We'll be right back. Here's what to watch out for today. The impeachment trial enters a new phase as lawmakers are set to kick off 16 hours of questions and answers now that opening arguments are over. After the latest revelations from former National Security Advisor John Bolton, Republican Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has acknowledged he does not have enough votes to block witnesses from testifying. And you can stream our full coverage of the trial beginning at 1 o'clock Eastern right here on ABC News Live.
Meanwhile, President Trump is scheduled to sign the United States-Mexico-Canada trade agreement at the White House. The USMCA revises NAFTA to expand market access for American dairy producers and aims to support auto manufacturing in North America. The new trade rules also include updates for digital trade and copyright rules.
Super Bowl Sunday is just days away in the NFL, and members of the law enforcement community will provide an overview of public safety plans for activities in Miami, including information for fans with tickets to the big game.
And SpaceX is scheduled to launch its Falcon 9 rocket carrying 60 Starlink satellites from Cape Canaveral there in Brevard County, Central Florida this morning after bad weather delayed launch windows yesterday and Monday. Well, that is it for us on this Wednesday morning. Great to have Janae Norman back.
Have a great hump day.
All right. See ya.